Hello YouTube friends and welcome to Sew Aldo. On today's sewing tutorial for beginners, I am going to show you how to cut your shearing time in half using this technique. So if you want to see how, keep on watching. Before we get started, be in the know, subscribe to Sew Aldo. I make awesome sewing tutorials for beginners. So if you like DIY fashion, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification. First thing I will do is cut out the front and back bodices. To get the measurement, you are just going to measure your bust area, then multiply it by 1.5, and that is the width of the bodice or the bodices. I decided to not use my bust measurement just because the dress that I made last time was a little on the tighter side, so this time I will be using 34 inches instead of 32. That is something you can consider too if you decide to remake this bodice. This project is actually going to be a dress, but I'm going to break it down into parts just because it is going to be a long tutorial if I combine it all in one video. And for the length of the top, I decided to do 10 inches, but of course, it's totally up to you. This measurement will vary depending on how long you want the top to be. It is short just because I am making a dress, but if you are going to make a top, instead of 10 inches, maybe do 24 inches instead. Don't forget to add seam allowances. So I decided to add 1/2 inch seam allowance on both sides. So I added extra 1 inch for the seam allowances. If you decided to make a tube top, you don't have to cut it in half like I did here. On this dress, I decided to have 2 side seams. That's why I cut it in half. And now it's time to cut out the half of the armholes. So this is 3 inches down and 3.5 inches in. We'll repeat the same measurement on the other armhole. And I'm going to cut it out carefully. This is another tip to prevent the front neckline from gaping. I am going to bring down or trim down the neckline by about 1 centimeter. After that, I am going to hem the necklines. I'm simply going to fold it twice and then sew it from here to the other end. I will repeat the same steps on the back neck. Now it's time to join the side seams. Simply match the right sides of the fabrics, and I'm just going to sew it from here to this and on this side as well. And if you notice, I also serge all the raw edges. And here I am doing 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm super excited about this dress, you guys. This is actually a last minute sewing project just because I made this dress so I can bring it to our vacation in Gulf Shores, Alabama. I started sewing around 7 o'clock in the morning, and by 4 o'clock I was done. It's time to shear the bodice. So now I am just placing elastic thread in the bobbin. I already have a tutorial on how to do this. This is another tip on how to cut your shearing time in half. Basically, you have to wind up 2 or more bobbin with elastic threads, so you don't have to keep on stopping when you run out of elastic thread. You're simply just going to take the empty one and place a new one in the sewing machine. My first ever shearing tutorial, I actually spent shearing for like 5 hours, because you have to wind up one bobbin and then start all over again. But if you have extra, it's going to cut down your shearing time. This time it only took me about 1.5 hours from start to finish. Now that the sewing machine is ready, it's time to adjust the stitch length, and be sure to test on a separate fabric. Different types of material will shear differently, so be sure to test that out first to figure out the stitch length that is proper for the fabric that you are using. I am using 100% rayon material, and the stitch length that I decided to use for this project is 4.2. It's time to start shearing, so I'm just going to start from the top, and I'm actually going to be cutting the elastic or the thread once I reach the end. The reason why is half of the armhole is not connected to each other, right? So I have to basically stop when it ends and then start over at the back, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. And once I reach the end, I'm just going to cut it and tie a knot so the elastic will not unravel. Then I'm going to start shearing the back neckline. And as you can see here, I didn't draw any line. I will be using my presser foot as my guide. Here I am just moving the needle to the farthest left so I can get a 1 centimeter allowance. Now that the armholes is done, I am going to be shearing on the bodice now, so it's going to be much easier just because it's going to be a continuous stitch. Smooth out any wrinkle. You don't want to sew over a wrinkled fabric because it's going to look terrible. Once you run out of elastic thread, simply backstitch and then remove it, and then you are going to tie a knot so it doesn't unravel. After you load the bobbin, you are going to start again where you left off and just continue on sewing until you sheared the whole entire bodice. I ended up changing the bobbins like 10 times, but it actually made my life a little easier because I have extras already. And this is the finished bodice. As you can see, it looks so pretty. All you have to do is just trim off excess threads, obviously, but this is the first part of this dress tutorial. If you find this sewing tutorials for beginner very helpful, be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit the notifications so you will get notified whenever I post a new one. I will see you next time. Bye!